When you're hunting for a laser level, the temptation to grab the cheapest rotary you can find is strong, especially when you see a $30 budget model on a marketplace. I've been there, and I've also seen the headache that follows. The beam drifts after a few minutes, the battery dies in the middle of a job, and the whole thing ends up in the trash box. That's why today I'm looking at the Leica Rugby 640 rotary laser level rod I-140 and asking whether it actually feels like a smarter buy or just another pricey toy. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest hesitation most people have is whether the extra cost translates into real-world reliability. A rotary laser is supposed to give you a 360-degree reference line that stays true while you're laying drywall, grading a slab, or setting up a sprinkler system. If the device can't hold its calibration after a short warm-up, you're back to manual chalk lines or, worse, redoing work you thought was done. That's the core risk I keep in mind when I compare the Leica against cheaper alternatives. What sets the Rugby 640 apart is how Leica has focused the design around daily usability on a typical job site. The unit is built around a 140-foot rod that can be mounted on a tripod in seconds, and the rod eye sensor lets you pick up the beam at any height without climbing a ladder. In practice, that means if you're grading a driveway, you can set the laser up on a low tripod, walk the length of the site, and hold the sensor up to the beam to check the grade without repositioning the whole setup. I've watched contractors do this on multiple sites, and they consistently appreciate how quickly they can get a reference point at eye level. The strength of the Rugby 640 really shows when you need consistent accuracy over a long run. Leica claims a 0.3 mm per m accuracy, and while I don't have lab numbers to quote, field reports consistently point out that the beam stays within a hair's breadth even after an hour of continuous operation. For a homeowner who's hanging shelves across a living room, that level of precision is overkill, but for a professional framing crew laying out a wall layout on a 2,500 square feet house, it's a time saver. One common scenario I've heard about is installing a floating floor. You set the laser, walk the entire perimeter with the rod eye, and mark the exact level line. The process finishes in about half the time you'd spend with a manual level and a string. That said, the Rugby 640 isn't without trade-offs. The most obvious one is price. It sits well above the $100 mark that many hobbyists are comfortable with, which can make the purchase feel risky if you're only planning to use it a few times a year. Also, the unit relies on a rechargeable lithium-ion battery that's not removable. If the battery dies on a job and you don't have a charger handy, you're stuck. In contrast, many cheaper rotary lasers use AA batteries you can swap out in a pinch. The Leica battery, however, gives you about 12 hours of continuous runtime, which is generous for a full day's work. Another practical consideration is the learning curve of the rod eye. The sensor is very handy, but it does require you to align it properly to catch the beam. New users sometimes report that the first few attempts feel like they're chasing the laser, especially in bright sunlight where the beam can be harder to spot. Once you get the rhythm, hold the sensor at a comfortable height, tilt slightly until the indicator lights up, it becomes second nature. So if you're buying this for a crew with mixed experience levels, a short training session will pay off. Who should actually buy the Leica Rugby 640? If you're a professional contractor, a landscape architect, or a serious DIY enthusiast who tackles larger projects like deck construction, basement finishing, or extensive tile work, this laser will likely pay for itself in reduced labor hours and fewer mistakes. The combination of long-range rod, quick-mount tripod, and the rod eye sensor gives you the flexibility to move around a big site without constantly releveling. It's also a solid choice for anyone who needs to work in both indoor and outdoor environments because the laser's self-leveling mechanism handles vibration from nearby traffic or wind without losing its reference. On the flip side, if you're someone who only needs a level for occasional picture hanging or setting up a small garden fence, you'll probably be better off with a basic line level or a budget rotary that sits in a drawer until the next weekend project. The extra accuracy and durability of the Rugby 640 won't translate into noticeable benefits for those small tasks, and the higher upfront cost may never be recouped. A practical weakness that's worth mentioning is the lack of a built-in mount for a magnetic base. Some competing models let you snap the laser onto